All right. Now, Boca Joe's there. He's got a few other things he wanted to show you.
Yeah, I wanted to give you kind of an idea. This is one of the bananas we saw earlier, red Abyssinian banana, and this is kind of the size, or maybe even a little smaller, that you might plant in your garden in May or June. This plant here will grow to about 12 to 13 feet high if you water it well and fertilize it well. This is a good example of the elephant ear here. It shows about the size you might be when it goes in your garden. And again, you can get a good 6 feet out of these plants in your garden during one summer. And I don't know if you can see in here, but there are several plants in this one pot. And you could break those up and plant them separately or leave them in a clump. But it just gives you an idea of this is what happens to these plants. They multiply. You'll have more than you know what to do with. We've got a canna here. Again, this is the size you might put out in the garden. You could get 4, 6, 8 feet of growth out of this one little plant in one season. So don't be fooled by the size of the plants when you buy them. You could even start with smaller sizes. I've started with things in 4-inch pots that were literally a few inches high that grew to 8 feet high in one season. So it's really dramatic, and it's neat to watch the changes during the season as these things grow and multiply.
Joe, pull that plant, that canna back up there, and just let them see the color combination with the stripes and the red stems and then the red banana, the way that those things play off of one another there. That's what you're talking about. When you're talking about designing the thing, those are colors that go so well together.
Yeah, that really does look beautiful. Now, one of the things we keep saying, I'm wondering, Bart, we're talking about planting these things in May and June, so we're not late in getting started?
Well, I'm going to have to admit, I think Joe's plants are going to get bigger than mine this year. Joe, he had the advantage of a little extra head start, had a little greenhouse working over there. We had very cool and damp early spring. It's only been the last few weeks that we've actually had good growing conditions if you put them in the ground. What you basically need, you need to have nighttime lows in the 50s because you need to have the ground warm. So I got a late start between my work with I'm over there at the Manassas baseball with my son, and then I got a late start on the pool, and we went from cold rain to warm rain. So my things are just now starting to really come alive. I have some cannas and some bananas that are, getting up around 4 feet right now. But now that summer's here, I think everything's going to pop.
All right, that's what I wanted to hear, because we just brought in to our Fair Oaks store, we brought a whole truckload of these tropical plants in so we could really expand our selection. And we know that this something is, now we're in that warm weather and we've had the moisture. This is something that you really can pick up and get started on now. I think before we go into this winter storage aspect, it's going to take some time. We'll take a little commercial break, because I know that's what everybody's wondering about, is what happens during the winter time. So when we come back to commercial, we'll go through that in a little more detail. Well, we've been talking about tropical landscapes and trying to encourage everybody to plant bananas and palms and all these exotic plants, because of just how well they do and how they thrive through our hot summer months and everything. But I'm sure what's on everybody's mind, the whole thing, is what happens as we go into the winter.
Joe has some good pictures here of the way that he does it.
A lot of work. October is not a fun time. Basically what you can do, you can either treat these as annuals, throw them away like people do with their flowers and vegetables, or you can try to overwinter these. It's pretty simple if you want to go through these steps. You basically take these plants that we've seen in the previous slides, cut them down pretty much to within a few inches of the ground. You basically want to save the root system or the bulb. This is just some pictures of what I do with my cannas. I found these Ziploc bags. They're 2.5 gallon Ziploc bags. They work extremely well in keeping these canna roots over the winter, and you just need to store them in a cool place, say between 45 and 65, with the bags open, and they overwinter fine and they start growing again in the spring. The next slide gives you an idea of what happens to these 10 and 12 and 6 foot high elephant ears and banana plants. again, you basically cut down the entire stem and you're preserving this, this root on the bottom, or corm as they're called. Keeping them cool and dry over the winter. This is a very simple method here with just some cardboard boxes stored dry and cool in the basement. And they just seem to start growing again in the spring. They kind of know when it's time, even without light. So it's a little bit of work, but it's pretty rewarding because you do get a lot more plants each year from what you started with, so you can give them away or expand the garden or whatever you want to do.
So they're just in your basement or garage. I mean, would an unheated garage or shed do the trick, or do they need a little more protection?
As long as they don't freeze. The optimal temperature range is probably above 45, but below 65.
Because that's the one thing I would say. Somebody like myself who has no storage space, you know, this could be a little bit of a limiting factor. And so you're just kind of, like I said, put them in cardboard boxes, plastic bags through the winter time, and then when do we bring them out?
They typically start growing again in February or March, and then you can kind of bring them into a warm or a brighter area, and then eventually outside in April in these boxes or containers, and then of course in the ground in May. So you kind of go through the process. They don't need any water during the winter if you keep them in this temperature range, so it's pretty straightforward. You'll lose a couple every winter, but it's pretty easy process.
Right. Now, I know, Bart, you've been leaving a fair amount just in the ground.
I do it the lazy man's way, I have to admit. I let the frost...
I'm shocked to hear that.
I know. I know.
Now, it's the busy man. That's why I used to call myself the lazy gardener. Now I just call myself the busy gardener.
It's much better like that. Seems like you have a lot of things going on.
Right.
Well, I like to enjoy these things as long as possible, and you can get a light frost in the morning and burn some of these plants, and when you come back in the afternoon, you'll see 4 to 6 inches. The thing has grown again. I like to let the frost just burn everything down. Then I'll dig it up, I'll chop it off, I'll rinse it off, and I'll let it dry a little bit, and I just take great big trash cans, put a layer, throw in some peat moss, throw them in, put in some peat moss, put them down in the basement. I just stick them all together. Sometimes you get some surprises that way. You can plant something and you think it's something else. So it'll pop up. I've been trying to label the various little trash cans and all, but Joe's right. They start growing on their own. I like to use tax day. It's easy to remember, April the 15th. Normally our last frost date is somewhere in the neighborhood of April 20, April 22nd, and even if it gets a little light frost, you've got these things in the ground, it's not going to hurt them. But we need the nighttime temperatures and the soil to warm up in order to get these things really started. And right now, they're starting to take off.
Excellent. We've got a few more pictures just to show you some design ideas, some compositions, how these and other plants have been mixed together.
Yeah, one of the things we like to do is take a lot of the common house plants. Here you see philodendron outside in the summertime. Does tremendously well in sun or shade, believe it or not. And you've got some impatiens there. The next slide will show you castor beans, which are a very dramatic plant. That's a 6-foot fence there, and I've seen these as high as 15 or 20 feet. They're kind of the magic bean plant. They have big bean-like seeds, and you can just poke in the ground in the spring, and you'll get tens of feet of growth on these during the season. A lot of contrasting colors too. Next slide is one of my favorite plants too. Is the variegated shell ginger, which is the green and white plant in the front here. Again, another very dramatic plant. Goes well with purples and pinks and reds and oranges. Can tolerate full sun or full shade. And then the last photo is an example of what you can do here. This is Friend's garden plot in McLean, Virginia, where he actually grew a store-bought papaya from seed, overwintered the seedling, planted the seedling out the following spring in his garden, and this is the September that year. He's actually got papayas on his plant in McLean. So we are in a tropical zone here.